Um, the last little piece that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the method together. So I still am going to want to hear from you. This is not lecture from me, but more questions. So the first question is this: what did you notice that is different about this method? Kind of compared to traditional Bible studies, what do you notice that's different?
We didn't do any pre-work. We didn't answer questions before we came to this.
Okay.
And I couldn't take any notes.
I know, I'm so mean. I wouldn't let you take notes. Okay.
It's about life change and not about filling heads and hearts. It's the story. We won't forget the story, I'm sure. Not, but the story is changing our hearts, which is important. And there's a big sort of dynamic to it. We've learned, like, from each other and from you.
Excellent.
The questions are broader, so then it invites discussions.
Okay. Excellent.
I think the story can hit harder, so you don't forget it.
Okay.
You need to respond.
Okay. Anyone else?
I liked how the story was shorter and the discussion was longer.
Okay.
So there was more interaction and the story was shorter.
And I thought it was interesting how we all participated in the wrap up, basically, because we all brought out the applications in the lesson.
Okay.
I thought it interesting that the truth was always in the story, was hidden in the story. So
It's making us all take part and not be lazy.
Oh, you wouldn't be lazy in a regular Bible study, would you? No.
No, but sometimes some people don't take part at all. They just sit there listening to other people.
That's true. Okay.
I like that we listen to the story and then we have to retell it. So then it helps retaining the story and to share it at an alter occasion.
Okay.
Yes, you have to really listen when you know you've got to repeat it.
How did you feel when Lorna and I said, listen carefully because you're going to tell your friend? How did that make you feel?
Challenged.
Challenged? Okay.
nervous.
Nervous. All right.
Excited.
Okay. Anything else that's different about this method? It can be the obvious or something not so obvious. What else is different?
I've noticed that you repeat the story with details that are incorrect, and that the participants has to correct, and that makes sure that every part of the story or every detail is understood.
Okay, good. We'll talk about that a little bit more, so I'll hang on to that. But yes, we do tell it incorrectly.
Okay, so
gestures go ahead, Karen.
No, go ahead, Maud. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say that the gestures helps remembering the story.
Okay.
What I noticed in the story, never did the, at least what I heard was that you never said from the Bible or said scripture, or you just told a story.
Okay. So the first one was not a Bible story.
And you didn't have big words. You didn't have the words, the Christian, you know what I'm saying? The words like mercy and forgiveness and wrath and rapture. And, you know, it was simple and it was, if you're telling this story to someone who doesn't know the Bible, it's less intrusive. You know, they didn't hear the word Bible and they didn't hear the scriptures and they didn't hear the big words. They just heard a story.
Okay.
So I like that method.
Okay.
There was no physical Bible present.
Okay. Excellent. So thinking about who our target audience would be, those who don't read or don't like to read or don't have a Bible in their language. Why do you think we don't have that? Why am I not reading it out of a Bible? Why am I not having you turn in your Bibles? Why do you think that is?
Because it's much more personal,
Okay.
much more friendly.
Okay.
We're on level ground.
Oh, there it is, Val. That puts us all on level ground. Yes, absolutely.
Right. They might take it as condescending if you are reading and they can't read.
Yeah. Yeah, that puts a separation between some of your group. Okay. All right. So do you feel like this method is effective? Do you feel like it works for doing Bible study?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So what makes it work? What makes it engaging? What do you think?
Because people can't just sit there listening. They have to respond.
Okay.
We're not looking at books, we're looking at each other.
Yes.
It makes
Okay,
it
our
personal.
faces are not down. Okay.
And when they don't have
And it's a bit more like about life.
Okay, hold on. Let me get
Right, go
Leslie. Let me get Leslie first.
I felt that it was a lot more about life application, really, and it was more about applying sort of the truths that are in the Bible, but actually applying them to everyday life, which is so important. And I think sometimes when we're studying the Bible, we get so bound up with what's actually in the Bible that, you know, sometimes we do fail to apply it to our own lives. And that's what I've liked about this. It was more about life application.
Okay. And then Shirley, and then I'll go to Janet.
Yeah, it was all about everyday life. It's really getting down to things, you know, that happen in everybody's life. And I think it's wonderful for people who don't have English language as first language, and also for young mums who are so busy they don't have time to do all the writing.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a wonderful way of engaging people.
Good. Thank you. Janet, did you have something else you wanted to add?
No, I didn't.
Okay. I thought you were jumping.
Everybody.
Okay. Anything else? What makes this engaging? So you can't just sit there. You got to participate. What made you participate?
Well, made me participate when, or listen carefully when you said we were going to have to retell it. So I got very nervous and thought I got to listen really hard. So.
Okay. Anything else?
Repeat the question again, Jodi.
What makes it engaging? What is it about this that made you participate?
So what made us participate? What made us participate in answering the question? So you're asking about the participant part. I think what made it engaging was, you know, when you're speaking to someone, it's the attention getter that you get first that made it engaging. Because sometimes when you first start to speak, some people can just turn you off if it's not, and you know, if there's not some type of. Do you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to say the word. Usually when you speak, you want to have an attention getter at the beginning so that you have their attention. Okay. And I think that's what made it engaging. You had my attention by the actions of not, you know, the hands, but also of the words, and it grabbed my attention. And everybody loves a good story, but there are boring storytellers. I think that I know. So I mean, that's what I liked, is that you had my attention right at the beginning, and that's what made it engaging.
Good.
Jodi, you didn't give us a choice not to participate. If this is the process for spoken and everybody ends up having to go off and engage with one other person and tell the story, there is nobody allowed to be passive in this experience. So their own investment ends up making it a part of them. They're going to carry something away, you know. Interesting.
Jodi, do you know what I found really interesting about this? It's the fact that we're going back in time, even before Jesus, people were telling stories. That's how history was passed on. That's how things were done. And then that person would tell a story. The next generation would tell it. Yes, it might get bits might get altered in between the telling, but even so, it was still being passed on. And that's why we've got most of the stories we have today. It's because it's been passed on. So we're really going back in time and starting again, doing it from the way it was before.
Nice. Yes. Okay, I saw Michael and then Carla, I think.
I didn't notice that until Janet was talking, but I noticed that when we broke off into just like one or two or three people, and we had to engage. So that was like an icebreaker, so to speak. So it kind of primed the pump. So we've already shared in a less intimidating environment, and now we come back. And now we're kind of ready to go. And all it takes is one or two person to start going. And it just it felt like it just pulled everybody in at that point.
Almost like it was on purpose or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
You wouldn't do anything crafty like that.
No. Carla, what do you think? What were you going to share?
Yes, I wanted to say that I agree with what Michael said. That's a great start, and exactly how Janet said that knowing that we need to share the story in a very small group makes you pay attention. And when you pay attention, when you need to share and you go back to the big group, then because you paid attention, you know, and you see that everybody is listening and speaking and they are nice, kind, makes you really comfortable to share also what you think. And that's great.
Good. Okay, so who taught the lesson today?
The Lord did.
Okay, the Lord did. Anyone else?
Well, we all participated.
All of us.
The facilitator.
Yes.
The facilitator was also the teaching director, right? I mean,
did I teach though?
In maybe the directing of the questions.
Okay.
I think everybody.
You told the story.
Yeah. So let's answer this question first. Who taught the lesson? I think you guys got. There's two: the Holy Spirit and all of you. You all taught the lesson together. So now my role and Lorna's role as a facilitator. What did we do as a facilitator? And I like how Michael called that a facilitator, not a teacher. What were we doing?
You were very encouraging, and you reiterated what people said that you wanted to emphasize. And yeah, so you really kept it moving.
Okay. What else did we have to do?
You created a safe environment.
How did we do that, Carla?
Like even now at the end, you noticed without me making a sound or something, you noticed that Michael wants to say something and I want to say something. And that's really great, you know, because you pay attention, and this way you create a safe place that everybody is heard and everybody got a chance to say, to add something to, yeah.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to say on that? How else did we make it a safe environment?
You respected what everybody said. You respected it. You fed it back to the group sometimes. So you did it with respect.
Okay. Anything else did you notice?
You didn't correct anyone really. You just thanked them for what they were contributing.
Very good. Is that important? Did I tell anyone your answer was wrong?
No.
Okay. Why is that important?
Because if you were to correct people, then nobody would speak anymore.
Yeah. If I was like, Karen, that was not a very good answer. I'm sorry. Does anybody have something else? I mean, right? Then, yeah.
You have to say, that was an interesting thought.
Sometimes, yes, Val, sometimes we do say that. And so that's interesting. Does anybody else see anything different? Or, yeah. But we don't want to shut anyone down by saying, well, no, that's wrong. because then that person shuts down, but then you also have other people in the room who are like, well, I'm not going to give the wrong answer. She's going to embarrass me too, right? So that safe environment is definitely a piece of it that makes that engagement possible. Okay. So the facilitator, you said, sets the safe environment, they encourage, they respond to answers. What else did the facilitator have to do?
Ask the questions.
Ask the questions. Yep.
So you had
I
some
was still,
questions to ask us.
sorry, Simon.
No,
And
that's
to
all
know
right.
the story.
Okay, hold on. Let me get Simon.
Well, you just had some good questions to ask us. You know,
Okay.
there were good questions. There were searching questions. They put us. They guided us to deal with heart matters. And yeah, okay. Somebody said we dealt with the details of the story. Of course we did, but we were on heart matters, and that was important.
Okay, Kevin, what were you going to say?
Well, I thought you did an incredible job of bringing us back to the story on the page, as it were, because part of the richness of the discussion that went on after that was because we all know the before and the after, or I think most of us do to greater or lesser extent. But you did an incredibly good job of bringing us back and focusing on what was actually delivered in that storyline. So, I think that was an incredible technique.
Okay.
Yeah, because we found some bunny trails a few times into things that weren't relevant to what you wanted us to draw out.
Okay. So
I like that
nudged
you.
a little.
I like that you ask like other questions to go deeper. In the fact that you recap from what the people discussed. Yeah.
Okay. There's one more thing we're missing that the facilitator did.
Tell the story.
Yay, there it is. Okay, so the facilitator, I call them the keeper of the story. Since we do not have our Bibles open, we're not searching, the facilitator's job is to learn that story and learn it well and know it so that if we're jumping out of the story, then we're able to draw them back to that story. Or if there's a key verse, like if you noticed, I asked at one time, what was it at the very beginning that gives us a clue about Nathan, right? And that was that the Lord sent Nathan. So we have to really know that story. We also have to present it. So let's talk about that. What do we do as far as presenting the story? What do you think we want to make sure we do?
Accurate.
Accurate. Number one, yes.
Also make it interesting. Somebody said that you can tell a story in a boring way and then you lose people, but you have to make it come alive with voice inflections and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Speak clearly.
Speak clearly, yes.
Yeah. Use body language.
It's harder on Zoom. I'm a much better storyteller in person. You have to take my word for it. But in Zoom, it's hard because we've got this little square that we're trying to keep our motions in. But yes, we want to use body language and hand motions, voice inflection.
Keep eye contact with the audience.
Yes. Which means that I need to have my story memorized, right? Because if I am reading, what do you see?
Just get eye contact.
You see the top of my head, right? You don't see my face. You can't see the part. So we want to learn that story. Okay. So I love that it is accurate. This piece is so important because what I take this very seriously, that if I'm going to someone who does not have the written word, if I am going to someone who does not read, then I am taking the Bible to that person. So I want to be very serious about learning this Bible story. We do not paraphrase, we memorize. We memorize the scripture and then we present it in a way that is accurate, but also engaging to people so that we draw them into that story, right? And you guys have already said the ways that we do that. So that's number one, is that telling the story. The second thing that we did was we told it again, because for many of you, this is not a normal task that someone's going to say, I'm going to tell you a story. I want you to remember it. And you're going to tell somebody else, right? So we give them a second telling of that story. In the curriculum for Spoken CBS, there is a picture that goes along with it because a lot of those stories are much longer. So we put a picture up for visual learners and tell the story that second time. Okay, after you heard the story, then we sent you to breakout rooms and we asked you to tell the story to a partner. We talked a little bit about this, but let's recap it. Why do we do that? Why is this step important?
To ensure that you've taken in the story that's been told.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, you're in a safe place with just one or two other people.
Okay.
Everybody to remember it.
Okay.
Everybody gets to talk so that they're ready for the plenary session when you're hoping for lots of people to put in and everybody's broken the ice.
And you
Yeah,
get to hear it again.
I'm sorry, Christy, can you repeat that?
And you get to hear it again.
Yes.
Yeah, at this point you heard it 4 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all of those answers, absolutely. Yes, Eric.
Yeah, I just want to say that one of the things my dad used to say was, when you teach, you learn twice. So that is a really great way of sharing overall. Other thing he said is, if you want to practice to retain the attention of someone, practice with the kid. If a child is like interacting with you with the hands, gestures, over time, you will know what type of people you can use hands, other type of people just, straightforward. But the more you practice and the more you teach, like show and tell, the more you can learn. You learn twice. So I think breaking up those small groups, they're actually learning double, one go.
Yep. So we talked about that when we told you to listen carefully, you did listen carefully because you knew you were going to have to retell it. So that gets you paying a little bit more attention to the story, right? Instead of zoning out and be like, oh, I know this story. No, you're going to listen carefully because you have to tell it. And then you guys said it, you're hearing it again. So by this point, if you've told it and someone else has told you, you have heard the story 4 times. If you had a third person in your room, you might have already heard it 5 times. It also breaks the ice and gets that people starting to talk. We all have had those people in our groups who do not speak up, right? So with this method, we want them to, and this is that you are absolutely right. It's a safe place. When we do this in person, we just tell people to turn to their neighbor and tell it to their neighbor. And so that's the way that works in person. Here we split to breakout rooms, but that just gets everyone started talking. Okay. Then we come back and we do, what did we do next? Do you remember?
You told it incorrectly and we corrected you.
Okay. Why on earth would we do that? Why would we tell the story with mistakes?
See if you've heard properly.
To see if you know it properly. Okay.
To remember the key points, because usually we try to do mistakes on the key points.
It's also interactive.
Gets people talking, gets some people speaking who mightn't otherwise have spoken.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent.
Dynamic. It's a nice free-for-all dynamic.
And then we get to hear it one more time.
You do? Excellent. Thinking about the dynamic in a normal classroom, the person standing up front or the person leading, what is that dynamic?
Well, they're usually giving all the information and you're sitting there listening. Whereas this way, and the person giving the information is usually the one doing the correcting. Whereas in this case, we're correcting.
Why would we do that?
Well, I like what Simon said. I think it's an easier transition to deeper questions. It's very simple to correct somebody else,
I think that it becomes more of our story instead of your story.
Okay.
When we get to say, no, that's not the way it's told, we take ownership to the story.
Yep.
Yeah, and we become more confident to tell it.
Okay. Excellent.
It's also a great transition to the questions and answers because especially in the free-for-all reactions to your mistakes, you know, you draw us all in. There's no singling out of any person, and yet you prepare the way for the questions to come so that we'll be responsive again.
Yeah, excellent.
In sports, when you have coaches that have all the theory, and they could be hard on you because you make mistakes. But there are others that are leaders. Now, leaders will go and work with you. Now, when they work with you, they want something in particular. During my years of boxing, one of the key things that my dad used to say all the time was, you need to have reflexes. And the only way to have reflexes is if you have a muscle memory connection. Now you can research this, muscle memory connection. With this whole dynamic right now, I'm going to change the word muscle with spiritual memory connection. If we listen to the story, which has key point that is wrong, we practice and we rehearse until we have a spiritual memory connection, which means that it's going to be an automatic reflex in the future from the specific individual that knows, like, no, that's something off. Yeah, that doesn't go that way. He might not know what it is, but he knows that something is off. So I believe that this is a great opportunity, and I will relate it to like sports that we have. This is my own term. I just created it. This is spiritual memory connection.
Yeah, thank you. So the other piece that it does is in a lot of cultures, the teacher is the expert. They're the one at the front. They know all the answers. I think you guys said that. This brings them down a little bit. So instead of seeing the leader, the facilitator, as the one who's going to tell us all the answers, I am bringing myself down to part of the group, and you are taking ownership. I love the way that Karen said that you are taking ownership of the story so that you guys are ready. And it does, it breaks the ice even more, right? So what did you notice about the mistakes? Anything you noticed about how we did those?
They were very obvious.
Yes. Yes. I am not trying to trick anyone. I'm not trying to sneak a mistake past someone and be like, haha, I got him. That's not the point of it. Okay, so we want to make them very obvious. Good. Anything else?
It made us very enthusiastic to correct you.
You did enjoy that part, yes. Okay. Anything else?
You seem to make the mistakes at the important bits.
Yes.
So that we would remember it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it draws us all together like a group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So our mistakes, I usually say we want to make them focused, which is putting them at those key places, funny or obvious. We want to make people laugh. We want to draw attention to that. And then few. We don't want to overwhelm the story with so many mistakes that you forget what the actual story was. Like, we just want to draw attention, focused, funny, few. We usually say about 5 to 8 mistakes, depending on the size of the story. So that's kind of those keys, but there's that, like you guys have said, it breaks the ice, it gets you involved, it gets you ready for the next step. And the next step was what?
Discussion.
The discussion questions. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. What did you notice about the questions?
They wasn't there to make you feel comfortable.
Did they make you feel uncomfortable, Sue?
Some of them did, yeah.
Okay.
Trying to figure out the best way to answer them. Yeah.
Okay.
And most of the questions were geared to make you think, not just repeat an answer that we've already heard or something. Like in our CBS lessons, a lot of them are just reiterating scripture, but you did all the what do you think question.
Mm-hmm. Which is important. So why do you think that we do why do you think, or what do you think questions, or what do you find interesting, or what do you like? Why would we ask those kinds of questions?
It gets everybody involved.
Okay.
everybody's opinion is important.
Yes.
It's more transformative, life change.
Excellent.
I think someone said earlier, it's application. You can apply it to your own life.
And it's a good way to gauge how much the audience understood clearly the story.
And it kind of lends into that, what we talked about. I didn't tell anyone your answers are wrong. I can't tell you that what you think is interesting is not really interesting, right? Because that's your answer. It's what you found interesting. It's what you found difficult. So it kind of is that open-ended. So often when a teacher asks a question, everyone's like, okay, what answer are they looking for, right? And we want to give the right answer that the teacher wants. That's not in this. With the way that we word the questions, there's no specific answer as a facilitator that I am looking for, okay? Anything else? What else did you notice about the questions?
I have to say, I think for myself, when you were asking the questions, Jodi, I think some of us were trying to think, what exactly are you looking for?
You think you
The
found
questions are few.
Okay, questions are few.
But they're probing questions. You're really forcing us to get into the story ourselves.
And you sort of said, I think just a minute ago, but there's no wrong answers.
They seem the same between the two stories.
So there are 5 basic questions that are the same throughout the curriculum. We always start with, what do you find interesting? The second is, what do you find difficult or challenging? The third question is usually, what do we learn about God from this story? I switched it, but I switched it on purpose. The fourth question is, what do you learn about relationships, or whatever our central idea is? And so we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute, but this time our central idea was relationships. So we asked, what do we learn about relationships from the story? And then our 5th question is, what will you choose to do? That's that application. What will you choose to do with what we've learned about this central idea? Are those the only questions I asked? Okay, why did I ask more questions, do you think?
I think you did it to bring clarity to the question, or to bring us back to where the question is.
Okay, good.
Well, you also wouldn't let anybody just give a short answer. You ask the question, why do you think that?
To bring deeper discussion and to bring out more points, important points, to help guide the conversation.
Good. So back to those 5 basic questions. What do you notice about the order of those questions? Do you think there's any reason for the order of those?
Well, the first question is a broad question, and then you sort of gradually you're homing in on more about us as people, me as a person. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Any other observations?
I think you leave the choose to do at the end, so that we've talked through every iteration, and it's a bit like Nathan saying, you're the man. He said, what are you going to do about it? But we can phrase it in our own language to move on to that.
Sorry, go on, Jodi.
I was going to say, I think Karen said almost everybody gave an answer to that application question. If I had asked that question first, do you think we would have had the same amount of participation?
No.
No.
Why not?
Because
sorry, Sue.
I was just going to say the application came about because of the discussion we had with the other questions.
Okay, good.
And because we'd all, more or less all of us, had answered the broader questions, the ones that weren't personal to us.
Mm-hmm. If I start with a personal question, like, what are you going to choose to do? Do you know that you can trust me as a facilitator yet? No?
No.
Do you know that you can trust the group yet?
No.
So we start with the broader question of what do you find interesting? That's an easy one, right? We can all think of something we find interesting. Then we go a little bit deeper with what do you find challenging or difficult? And then a little bit deeper, what we're learning about God, and then the more specific. So by the time we get to that application question, did we feel like a group? Did we feel like we could trust each other and learn from each other in a safe place?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, because we'd all listen to each other already.
Okay. Anything else on the questions?
Only that God didn't come first, which being centered around Bible, you just thought maybe God would have done, but he doesn't. He comes a couple, so you're not coming straight out with a Christian religious facts.
In what form, in what situation do you think that would be important, that it doesn't come right out of the gate?
I think because a lot of people don't know anything about God. In our schools, there's hardly anything taught now. Mainly about all the different religions, as if they're all the same.
Yeah.
Jodi, I think we're learning so much from one another as everybody's contributing, with the deepening questions, but the varying responses. We come away so much richer than if you had just tried to give us your spiel on it all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Holy Spirit is a much better teacher than I am. I give him that. So I don't even try, right? He has led you guys and shared, and I love that you shared with each other because we have grown together. And Michael might see something that I would never see, but when he says it, I'm like, that's really cool. I've never thought of it that way. And then that will stay with me as I'm thinking over the story later this week. So those are just great pieces of why we want to share and engage. Okay, so then the last piece of it is what we do is a summary. And we run through that little quick summary at the end, just kind of drawing on answers that people have shared. And that is kind of a wrap up for us. It's not a teaching time. I wasn't giving you new information, that I wasn't sharing my knowledge at that point. It was just drawing together what we had discovered as a group. So that facilitator role really is different than a teacher in a lot of ways. And that's something to kind of get used to. But I got to tell you, it's freeing. I love it. I love being a facilitator and listening and learning along with you guys. So that's been a great piece. So that is the method in a nutshell. You guys got to experience it. You got to see how we do this and why this little debrief to talk about why we do each of the things that we do. It is a recipe. I know I have a lot of ladies in here. If I just decide to leave my eggs out of the recipe, is my cake going to come out the same way?
No,
right? I can't just decide, I don't feel like putting that in here today. I'm not going to get the same result. So with this method, we want people to follow the full recipe. It's all of the pieces that go together to get the result that we have. Some people think, I'll just skip the telling to a partner. Or I'll just skip the story with mistakes. I don't like that part. But there's so many things that lead. You guys saw it's building this group and building this experience together. So that is the piece that we want to make sure that this is all a recipe.